Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, thank you. I really planned this very well, the ice cream session before the riveting administrators update session, so I'm so glad you all came back after your ice cream. So the administrators update for 2024 Spring ADRC meeting, your administrators steering committee has been at work for the past year. And I would like to introduce the current steering committee for 23-24. We have Karen Smith from UCSF ADRC. We have Sarah Van Hayden, I believe she is remote from the Indiana ADRC. We have Jennifer Friend from Kansas University ADRC, and Eric Shipp from South Texas ADRC. I'd like to see if you're in the room, please stand up, and I want to say thank you for your time and effort and all the meetings we have. We actually meet every month, and we have a quarterly meeting where we meet with all administrators that all of you know and come to there. But in addition to that meeting, we do also have representatives from NIA. We have Dr. Cerise Elliott, Dr. Nina Silverberg, Grayson Donnelly, and our meetings would not be possible without Hannah Rosenfeder from NAC. So thank you, Hannah, for everything that you do for us. So I know everybody's been waiting for this part and updates and revisions that have come through here. And you have heard a lot about the UDS4 updates, visiting portals, NAC website. And I'm going to, again, sort of send that point home. Please visit the NAC website for the External Advisory Committee best practices, which were previously called the Morris Metrics. And we thank Dr. John Morris for putting that together and setting the foundation for the EAC best practices here. In August of 2023, these metrics were revised and have been updated and are available with good templates that you could utilize when you are presenting to your external advisory committee members when they come to visit you. So please look for that. Again, it is a living process. We do solicit feedback from everybody. If there are new things you want, please reach out to me and any of the other admin steering committee members so we can continue to update the EAC best practices. And so in addition to that, I would like to also point that the progress report, also known as the RPPR guidelines, have been updated. That happened in November of 2023. This is also a living process here. This is a living document that is dependent on feedback from the administrators, and I mean all you folks out here who use that here. The big and most significant changes that were made to the tables A1 through A6, which are the administrative tables that we all use for our annual progress reports, interim reports, final reports. Those templates are updated and available at the NAC progress report to NIA website. So please, as a checklist, whenever you're doing your RPPR, please go to this website to download the latest versions of those tables there. In addition to that, I think we also updated the ORCO tables, E3, and then as Dr. Cavazos mentioned earlier, the REC tables, there was a little minor modification to that. Again, those templates are all downloadable there. That should be your source of truth, so please go there. Why did we revise the tables, you may ask us? And so I picked probably the table that all the administrators loved the most. Table A1, the federal grants table. And if you remember last year when Karen Marsh was the chair of the steering committee, we talked about these revisions. And Karen, thank you for setting the ball rolling for us to get us moving. And now we have continued to make further progress in revising all of the administrative tables. The goal being is for us to work smarter, not harder. And for this process to actually be there, and you'll see why we are going in this direction, is that we, and by we mean the Administrative Steering Committee and NIA and NAC, we looked at those tables, separated the fields. We wanted to create a process where the categories, for example, where you have the role of the ADRC was broken down so that we could actually have standardized categories that all ADRCs could actually report on. We also made it easier for us to collate that information, and in this case, we just used yes and no, because we got feedback that it would be sometimes very challenging to get affiliated study information in the time period that we needed. Again, this was something that we are still working on, but the goal being is that we want to streamline the submission process of these tables. So, RPPR tables, next steps. Remember, working smarter, not harder. Ann Arthur is here. She presented last year on the Kansas University's using of REDCap as a potential way of having these tables actually fed in there and actually being derived from a database. A working group was established earlier this year. It includes the Michigan ADRC, but the project is probably being spearheaded by KU, ADRC, and the admin steering committee members, and NAC and NIA representatives are part of this working group. Our goal is going to be to to create a standardized database for the RPPR tables that we could utilize across the ADRC network. We would like to also have flexibility to input data and download the tables, generate visual dashboards for key metrics and reporting, and streamline that submission process. Now, I do know that there are about 4 centers that don't use REDCap, so we do have representation out there for centers that are not using REDCap, because that's going to be on my next slide. The working group also, earlier this year, NAC sent an invite for proposals to all the steering committee chairs, and we proposed that this table database for your RPPR be part of their renewal there. And so we submitted the proposal to NAC, so that is part of the proposal, because we know it takes effort, time, and people to actually make things happen. So we thank NAC for actually accepting our proposal, and we hope forward that they'll move forward with it. What does that entail? So, very big picture out here. The goal for us is to take the current RPPR tables as they are, or if needed to further modify them, because we found all 37 centers have to submit those 11 tables as part of either their progress report, competing renewal, final report, or interim reports. So if you take those 11 tables, that's over 400 tables that NIA has to see at any point of time over that period of the reporting there. And also, there is a larger goal of NIA reporting this to Congress, some of the key metrics that are there. So we have NAC on board. The goal is for us for this database to be housed at NAC. We will use the KU infrastructure and build around it. And we look forward to input from the other ADRCs. There will be a survey coming out in the coming months to get your input from administrators. So don't worry, we will not let you down with surveys. But we will bring this database where we will have this information housed in REDCap at NAC. For those that don't use REDCap, we will figure out a way where you could batch upload this information. You would have access to input, editing, and updating this database for us. You would be able to then query it based on whether you need it for your 1-year reporting period or your cumulative years of 5-year reporting period. There are also legacy data that you also want to have there for your reporting tables that you want to do that. So those are the things we will continue to discuss and figure that out. But the objective would be that at the end of the day, it will also have a dashboard where you will be to visualize, for example, the resources your center has provided over a certain time period. In addition to that, NIA will also be able to see that across all 37 ADRC networks to be able to report that to Congress as some of the key metrics that they'll be able to pull out of there. Again, this does sound like a very lofty goal. We cannot do this overnight. We need your help. So please reach out to us if you have any other ideas. We know every ADRC site does their table reporting very differently. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that your steering committee is working very hard to work smarter, not harder for you. And with that, I will actually move to my final slide, where I'm going to be introducing Dr. Joanne Pike. And Dr. Pike is the President and Chief Executive Officer for the Alzheimer's Association. She's going to be talking about the Alzheimer's Association's approach to an evolving Alzheimer's and dementia landscape. And a little bit about Dr. Pike. Dr. Pike is, with her progressive experience in social support and public health, she's leading the Alzheimer's Association during a transformational period as novel treatments are emerging. So please give a hand to Dr. Pike. Thank you for that wonderful talk, Dr. Pike. Really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your Alzheimer's Association's 10-year vision plan. Really, thank you for sharing that out there. I'm going to ask our expert panelists to come up. And as I just introduce them, I would like to introduce Dr. Sharon Letchworth, who is the program manager of the Wake Forest ADRC. Emily Little, the administrator of the UCSD Shiley Marcos ADRC. Dr. Krista Mulder, the executive director of the Washington University Knight ADRC and professor of neurology. Leslie Dunn, administrator of the University of Pittsburgh ADRC and my mentor. And I have Dr. Sarah Biber, the executive director of NAC, to also join us if she's there. There's Sarah out there. So please have a seat, and I'll also want to acknowledge anybody on the Huvelo platform. If you do have questions, we'll be able to take them to the chat out there. This is going to be a little bit of a free-flowing out there, but I do have some slides that I will bring up and share, and I will sort of go through with our expert panel here. So we are going to sort of focus a little bit on the emerging areas of research, but we're also talk about some of the experiences that we have from our expert panelists here. Oh, look, I had pictures also up here. There you go. Okay. We did send a survey out, and as I go off to the other side, one of the questions that was brought up was, what processes and criteria are ADRCs implementing to determine eligibility for PET imaging? And everybody's heard about SCAN, Clarity, the P30, ADRC, RFA having 24 participants who require imaging up there. So this was a question that we thought would be something that would be a good way to sort of wrap up. You heard a lot about this, and sort of hear from our panelists a little bit about how the decision-making process is occurring at their sites and what tools they're using. So Sharon, if you want to go ahead?
Sure. I think the underlying theme for us in terms of PET eligibility is diversity of our participants. We have a subset of our cohort that's a biomarker-intensive set, and we have really an intensive effort to increase the diverse representation of participants in that subset of our cohort. So that helps drive our decision-making about funneling people toward PET and other types of biomarkers.
Leslie, I think it's on.
For our center, we had decided in this wave, our current wave of P30 funding, to try to do amyloid and tau imaging on as many folks as possible. We were using a combination of philanthropic funding and other grant funding to do so. And our first thought was to take a look, try to offer the opportunity, in addition to the issue of diversity, we were really interested in thinking about the types of subjects we really would like to get that intensive picture on. So we settled on patient or participants who had MCI, people who were worried well, who came in complaining of problems, but then tested okay. And then we had people who came in as volunteers, healthy volunteers, who actually were showing signs of cognitive difficulty. In addition, we also wanted to have a subset of mild AD patients, and also participants who had a variety of symptoms that we couldn't quite figure out exactly where they were. So we felt that the amyloid and tau imaging would be very, very helpful in trying to solve the puzzle.
Thank you. Go ahead.
At UCSD, I think we're balancing competing goals or competing demands. I think on one hand, we want to be responsive to the sense of urgency that some of our participants feel. They really want these scans. We want to provide them with the first access, first opportunity. Of course, we also want to make sure we get our sampling strategy correct. But I think we're going to work very carefully with our operations team and just kind of give them goals. You know, if we have funding for 50 scans a year, that basically means consenting one person a week and getting those 3 scans scheduled every week. So whether that's a team of a recruiter or core member and somebody in our biomarker core who's actually bringing the participants through that scan, I don't think we've fleshed that out. But I think we will use some balance of this sense of urgency and this sense of precision that we want to make sure that we include all of the important subgroups.
So as not to repeat things that other folks have said, at WashU, as with at Pittsburgh, we try to get the PET scans on as many people as possible. One thing I think that we're thinking about a lot is working with our imaging core, because the cyclotron fails sometimes, a dose fails, or someone comes in and the PET MR is being recalibrated or something like that. So especially when we're thinking for clarity and for the ADRC mandate, how do we get all of the sets of scans on everyone? I think is really going to be the clinical core and the biostatistics core working with our imaging core to make sure we close the loop on all of those people. So I think that's something we're really trying to figure out the workflows and communication streams for that.
Thank you. And just to add on to that is at the Michigan ADRC, where neuroimaging core is just part of this new cycle that has grown out of the clinical core. The neuroimaging core, biomarker core, and clinical core leadership is meeting to actually do this and see how we can do this in a more efficient way, where yes, the focus for us is to have underrepresented groups, and also the center's theme that is also looking beyond amyloid. And so with that focus in mind, we are having to take all of those things into consideration as we bring these folks to a consensus diagnosis. And then absolutely, like Leslie, as you were saying, are they the appropriate ones that we know that the amnestic MCI or folks with subjective memory complaint, these are the folks that are actually, we are wanting to look further and do deeper characterization on them. But I wanted to just also give a moment to Sarah, Dr. Sarah Biber here, to talk about how in the goal of the NAC bringing clarity and managing all of that, how does that fit into the theme with scan, clarity, and all of this data coming to you at the NAC also?
Yeah, so we're figuring it all out. We are, really trying to make it easier for ADRCs to, fulfill these requirements. And so when it comes to scan, we're trying to, we've done a lot of work to try to facilitate ADRCs submitting that data, following the protocols. We have a new, scan website, like I mentioned, that really outlines all of the steps, right, that are required, where to submit your scan compliant data, where to submit your heterogeneous MRI and PET images. We want those as well, just not submitted to scan. And then with Clarity coming online, we have a really exciting opportunity to synergize all of this even further, right, and also to provide funding, of course, for those scan submissions that are happening via Clarity. So we're really excited. We've figured out a lot of things with scan that are now working extremely well, and we're excited to build on that with Clarity and to leverage all of the parts that are working really well and add more.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So everybody knows UDS4 is coming, if you haven't sort of heard that over the last 2 days. It's here. UDS4 is here. It's alive, okay? I have to thank Karen Marsh for helping me with some of these slides here, because we were trying to make it sound positive and bring the fact that these are good things happening. It's changes for the good, folks, right? And this is where NAC is doing truly an evolutionary jump into where this data is going to be harmonized, shareable, disseminated across, and also providing you, all the ADRC network, with this wonderful opportunity to actually have these resources available at your fingertips. So each ADRC is going to face their own challenges and opportunities. Everybody is not using REDCap. Majority are doing that. What are some of the things that your ADRC is seeing as a challenge and an opportunity. So I'll probably start with Krista down there and come down this way this time around.
So I'm a PhD. They don't let me touch the participants at all. So I'm not the best person to probably start with this too. I think we're just trying to do a lot of planning, and we're trying to balance these plans with our ADRC renewal, which I know a lot of folks in the audience are. So how do we get all of that done in the mandate too? I know we've talked a lot also about some of the neurobehavioral impacts too. We're, I would say, largely a neurology-focused clinical core. So building in some of those more psychiatric concerns is, I think, something we're thinking about training and how to incorporate that. So all of our clinicians, and we do have advanced practice providers also doing some of these assessments to feel comfortable with that.
I think I'm definitely not going to be a decision maker in this process at our center. We're going to be, I'm probably going to have a role in just the change management aspect of how all of these things happen. It's going to involve meetings with multiple cores and stewarding that conversation and figuring out what decision-making process we're going to come to. I think we have the UDS4 implementation. We also have a dear, very capable data manager who is nearing retirement. So I think we're going to be managing multiple changes at once and looking for all of the opportunities that we can find in that space.
Leslie.
Our center is one of those 4 centers who are not using REDCap fully. So we have a legacy data set that goes back to 1985, and we are still continuing to collect some of those questionnaires that were part of our legacy, because we also had a focus on psychiatric symptomatology. So above and beyond anything that we currently have in the UDS, we also have our own questionnaires. So we are going to be working, our executive committee, our leadership, our executive committee, which is made up of the core leads, are all putting our heads together to figure out exactly how we're going to approach this issue. And to begin with, we will be using, we will continue to use the database that is from our epidemiology data center. However, for all of the new questionnaires that have come out in UDS4, we are going to be using REDCap. So we're easing our way into it. And most certainly, if we end up with a REDCap database for tables 1 through 7, I personally will be overjoyed, as will our other administrative team.
Yeah, we have a conversion. Great. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. Sharon.
So our center uses REDCap for certain things, but not for housing our clinical data, and it's not the interface that we use for that. We do have an extensive database that we've created and built, and we've been using over the last multiple years. And early on in the process, our programmer for our data core, John Hepler, reached out to NAC and started discussions about how we could transfer our data from our database into REDCap, and I believe we're going to be taking advantage of that API process. It's just database to database transfer. He's very confident it'll work smoothly. The NAC folks were very, very helpful in helping to resolve that for us. So we're fingers crossed it's going to be very seamless. I just wanted to take a moment, and the theme of this session is change management. And just hearing today all that NAC has done to manage change management on UDS4 has been so impressive. And going back to the fall meeting, there were presentations on this as well. So when I think of change management, I think of engaging stakeholders, planning, foreseeing issues, working ahead of time to be proactive in resolving those, communicating what the steps are, making it as easy as possible for everything. You guys have done all of that and have done it so very well, and I'm just optimistic it's going to go smoothly for all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you for saying that. I didn't pay her to say that. Sorry. Thank you.
This is a shining example of change management.
Absolutely. I think this is harken back to the days, probably 7.5 years ago, when I came to my first ADRC meeting. I remember red cap was not a word you used at this meeting, and Dr. Hiroko Dodge said, Ari, you go and talk about red cap. And I was like, okay. And we had a few people who said, yeah, we use red cap out there. 7.5 years later, that has actually now become part of this there. So we thank NAC for listening to everybody, for hearing us and working along with us. And at the Michigan ADRC, it was easier for us because we just used red cap. And so, John, there's nothing else, right? It is red cap, always. Good, that's it. I get a thumbs up from our data co-manager. So.
Well, I'll just add to that it literally would not have been possible without our collaboration with the ADRC program. And so, when we asked folks to team up with us to make this happen, they answered the call, and folks like you, Ari, who have been integrally involved with our electronic data capture work group and building this system in collaboration with us. So we could not have done it without you guys. So thank you.
Teamwork together. Thank you. So moving on, ADRC administrators wear a lot of different hats when it comes to roles and responsibilities. Some people see us as money dollar signs, financial operations, also as the person who says no to things. Also, you play a role as an integrator and a resource navigator for your ADRC and your institution. And in that, I just wanted you to share some of your experiences here, is how you manage stewardship, and as the ADRC over time has changed, and how have you managed the many portfolios and roles that you have at your ADRC? So, want to start down? Start with Emily, probably, if you like.
Thanks, Ari. How do I manage my many roles and responsibilities?
Absolutely.
Well, I do put out the fires first, and then we think about our other strategic priorities, and I have a lot of meetings. I think we are centered center, and that we do have an executive committee that meets weekly. It's the clinical and admin core. We have an all-cores meeting monthly, and we have a lot of regular meetings that act as a kind of anticipated cycle of communication. So that's just the baseline, and then whatever comes onto the desk.
Thank you. Leslie?
Yes, I think that for us, definitely the financial end of things is the number one thing that I need to focus on. And way back in the old days, one of our older center directors used to say, well, let's see, Leslie can find the money. And so I spent an awful lot of time working with our fund development office and our philanthropy groups to try to figure out a plan of action for also bringing in extra money, because as we all know, the ADRC do not give us enough money to cover all of the things that we do. So you're constantly, as an administrator, trying to figure out how to maximize the use of the money that you have. And we spend a lot of time with that. I'm fortunate that I have a fabulous administrative core team, including Kathy Savage, who is my left hand, my right foot, my left foot, and my brain. And we also now, with all of the regulatory work that we're doing, we now have a regulatory coordinator, not full-time, but part-time, who deals with a number of the IND protocols that we have in our center, because we really focus a great deal on imaging and some of the more innovative new inflammatory PET markers. And so we need that. And we also, the issue of IRB, we're constantly having to revise things. The field is changing so rapidly, and as we started to deal with the issue of results disclosure, we had long meetings with our IRB about exactly how to do that process. So I think that the financial and the whole regulatory area has really become a major focus. Again, we have meetings of our executive committee, we have meetings of our of our cores, and the cores now have developed very, very close relationships, especially between our neuroimaging core and our fluid biomarker core and our neuropathology core. They are meeting both informally and formally on a very regular basis. We also, with the recruitment aspects and the clinical core, we have regular meetings between the OR core and the clinical core, and that is key to move everything forward, not only for looking at diversity and bringing more diverse subjects into the center, but also all of the educational and outreach activities. So it's sort of, I feel like at times I am herding cats, because we have people who are doing so many different things, but they all intertwine, and trying to make that move forward is a major challenge.
Thank you, Leslie. Sharon?
Yes, so like a lot of what was already mentioned, there are definitely many different hats. The Wake Forest ADRC is a fairly new center, and we've grown extremely rapidly over the last few years. And I'm very proud to say that it seems to be done successfully, and we're a strong center in a very short amount of time, and that requires a lot of teamwork. And a lot of growth, a lot of new initiatives coming online. We had to work together to make all that happen. And our center, we have this concept of centeredness. And I think that we feel that at the Wake Forest ADRC because it is so collaborative and it's a great environment to be in. And so where does the admin core fit into that? When it comes to new initiatives, often we're jumping in, helping to answer questions, helping to clarify what needs to be done, filling in gaps, making connections, just kind of making things happen and helping to establish processes. And then once something is up and running, we might take a step back from that and kind of let it happen once you've got it set up and move on to the next challenge. So, it's always something is evolving and happening, and that's an exciting thing. So the administrators just help make it all happen, I guess.
That's right. Chris?
I like what Sharon just said there. That's really good. I was going to say, and we kind of had a little brainstorming about this panel before, a week or so ago. And I said, when I was in Ari's position, when I was chair of the steering committee some years ago, I queried the administrators, how do you spend your time? And I thought I would get, I don't remember what the number was, 32 different answers or something at the time. But it was surprising how it really fell into three groups. Number one was just as people said, finding or stretching money. That's the number one thing that we do. Number two was herding cats of different sorts, sizes, and tempers. And the third were what I called grab bag items, which are just the things that appear out of nowhere and all of a sudden it's on your plate. I don't know if any of you have been around long enough to remember the breakthrough ride in 2010. That was the very first thing that Dave Holtzman came in, and I was like, Krista, do you want to handle this breakthrough ride, this bicycle ride that's going across the country, and make sure we have riders all across the state of Missouri? I was like, okay. So just these things that happened, and we launched FreezerWorks at our center over the past few years, and I'm very lucky to have our assistant executive director, Marissa Streitz, because I was not going to get that launched on my own, so just these things that kind of appear out of nowhere, I think the administrators handle a lot. I was also going to give some credit to our former director, John Morris, and our current director, David Holtzman, because, and I want to encourage any of the directors who are still in the room, I always feel that they have my back. So that's, I think, the way I can get things done, because if I say something, I know that that they're behind me and they're not going to say something different. So I would encourage all the directors to get your administrators to get things done. You have to support them, and if they give a deadline, to back them up. So that's the real deadline. There's no true deadline.
Very well said, Krista, absolutely. And this is true, communication and having the support of your leadership at the center is great. There are so many various personalities across, but collaboration, it takes a lot of energy to make sure all of those things align. And so we see that every year with our progress report. That is just one of the many things that you do out there. So thank you for sharing that. I was going to move to, let's see. Okay. So going towards our change management training, and when we did have our little brainstorming session 2 weeks ago, we came about some of the ideas that we thought would be something good for us to think about. We are seeing a lot of work being done to support junior faculty, junior investigators, rec mentees. There's all of this going on there. But we also felt like there's also a role where administrators could also be getting help and support and training, because that next generation of the administrators, they're out there, we need to bring them. It's a multi-talented role this individual has to have. So I was going to start with you.
Yeah, I think, and beyond administrators, one thing I talk about at Wake Forest is my background is actually in the pharmaceutical industry, and leadership training, management training in terms of projects and people is a lot more formalized there than it is in academia, which I found really surprising when I first came here, because research is managing big projects and managing large groups of people. I'm starting to see that change in various institutions. I'm seeing it change within Wake Forest. We're starting to offer more of that. But I would really like to encourage the institutions within the ADRC network to seek out those opportunities for training faculty and trainees and staff for that project management and people management framework, so that there is a common language and a common structure that everyone is building on and everyone is operating within. There are a lot of materials out there. What we had talked about was combining resources across centers, and just our small group had talked about, oh, well, our center does this, or our institution has that, and we've got materials that could be shared. Alzheimer's Association may have some resources that could be shared with us or made available. So I see this as really as an opportunity to help make these things easier for everybody in our centers. And we've talked about this in our rec as having a team science kind of theme to our rec, and the science of working in large teams. And at Wake we have a number of very large clinical studies, and how do you manage that and move that forward. So I just think everybody would benefit from more formal training, and we should make that happen.
Leslie.
I would second what you say, and I know that at the University of Pittsburgh, they now have a series of educational programs for staff development and also faculty development that focus on leadership and also focus on grants management. So there are certificate programs that you can engage in. So there's a whole curricula that you can actually follow. So we are strongly urging people to get involved in that. There are diversity certificate programs. And we also have our CTSI has got a really, really strong developmental program for people who are clinical coordinators and junior faculty who are just starting out. It's wonderful when you have your junior faculty get their K Award or get their first RO1, but now they have to actually do the science part. And many of us were never trained in how to actually run a project. And we need to provide those kinds of services to our young investigators so that they can be successful.
And that's exactly, a lot of institutions have CTSI programs where they have for study coordinators, project managers, but also for junior faculty who get their first grant, they got to write their IRB, and they're going to come to who? One of us, like, hey, I have to get this human subject thing done. And so one of the things we talked about is that as part of our Next Gen Leaders Initiative at Michigan and our rec, we are thinking of developing where there would be this administrative side of what expectations are there from junior investigators when they get a grant, that these are the things in your project life cycle, going back to that other slide, was that you'd have to do, and here's the support, and if you don't, we can do that. But I think what I'm hearing is that there's a potential here for where we can collaborate and actually have a list of these resources that could be housed centrally so that we could share that across our network here. And so Sarah, with that, I'm just going to go down the line and see what thoughts you have as NAC has now also really made these big changes there. How are you at NAC dealing with it?
With our changes within NAC?
Yeah, your changes with the NAC and in training your team and sort of giving them extra tools to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think the key pieces for some of the changes at NAC have been really setting up a successful framework for team science. So all of our projects at NAC are interdisciplinary projects, and we have a lot of different projects. We have to really carefully track across all of those projects and make sure that we have a strategic roadmap where we're headed, and then we know where we're at on that roadmap and where we need to pivot, and that we have, flexible systems in place that allow us to pivot, put out fires as we need to, et cetera. And so that's really the general framework of it. And then, I mean, a huge part of our success at NAC is our amazing team. We have some incredible team members at NAC, and really are committed to growing their roles there and advancing their training there as well. And so that's something that we invest in and we check in with folks about, and we work really hard to try to make sure that we can support them and where they want to go with their careers as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Emily?
It was great to hear the Alzheimer's Association process and setting the mission, vision, 10-year plan, and then the incremental, more detailed plans that happen after that. I think that's a fabulous process, absolutely makes sense at scale for an organization, and that can be communicated broadly into a multi-constituent group. We've dabbled in this exercise of visioning at our center with mixed results. I'm not sure if it makes sense on the scale of a single center, or even much less on the core level. But we do go through this 5-year process of renewing our grants, where people think very, very carefully about the science and are very responsive to the RFA. So I think it's an analogous process. And just in the process of learning how to write grants, how to be responsive to an RFA, and how to implement a project, you pick up those skills as you go. So you don't need to come in as an expert, but any training that's available, I'm sure, is welcome for our trainees.
Always out there. Krista?
I just wanted to do a quick nod back that that breakthrough ride that I mentioned, I didn't see a lot of recognition, but that was a partnership with the Alzheimer's Association, so I should have said that when I said it. But in terms of, so I've just joined a women's leadership journal club, and we just read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I don't know, probably people with management training more than I have read this book. I guess it's a classic. But one of the things that really struck me about change management when they talk about that from that book that I'm trying to implement in our center work is that you have to agree on what the priority is. If all of the parties that are involved can agree on what is that we're all trying to get to, and then you might have differing opinions on how to get there, but that the voices just want to be heard. So you don't have to agree to do what everyone says, but at least you have to agree on what the priority is, and that let everyone say what they need to have said. And then if you've all agreed on the priority, you can say, well, what's the best way to get there? So just understanding that people need to have their voices heard, and then we can agree on the priority. I think that that's a good message, and to try to implement that.
Thank you. So the last part, we got probably 2 slides more, and I just wanted to bring up some of the questions. This work. There we go. And we do have these last 2 slides. I wanted to just sort of get, how does each ADRC facilitate communications between the different cores? And we already mentioned that, you have some sites have weekly executive committee meetings. Our site at Michigan has a weekly meeting with the data core. Clinical core has a weekly meeting with its managers. The OR core has regular meetings with leadership, and then has a monthly meeting. Our executive committee meets once a month. We are a tri-university consortium with Michigan State and Wayne State University. So one of the good things that came out from the pandemic was that we could do all of this by Zoom, and everybody can participate from Grand Rapids, East Lansing, Ann Arbor. We can do that all in a great way there. Any other different strategies that your centers are using for communication between CROs, sort of sending messages back and forth? This was one of the questions that was there.
Instead of doing emails, now we're
Use the microphone.
Instead of doing emails, we're now texting one another. So that is really how we're communicating rapidly.
Yeah.
And again, I think that the issue of having the cross-core meetings, the smaller ones, is where you get a lot of work done, so that when you get to your executive committee meeting that may be once a month, everybody has already been working on issues, so that you get an opportunity to really move issues forward and solve problems.
Sharon?
We kind of have an open format for our core meetings, so we have a lot of cross-core membership that is built into different core meetings. So, and then if you're not a regular member, if there happens to be a topic that's relevant, we make an effort to say, this person needs to be at the meeting to participate in this discussion. We also have kind of a integrated biomarker working group that covers both imaging and fluid biomarkers to help address topics that are relevant for both of those cores. We have other open meetings. Of course, we have the executive committee where all the cores are present, and then we engage our overall ADRC community and have like a full investigators meeting. When we have our external advisory committee meeting, we have that as an open format so people can come and hear the different core presentations. So we try to have an exposure available to across the ADRC.
Krista and Emily, anything else to add?
No, I think all of these strategies
Exactly.
for operations within program, but one of the effective things that I think we've done more of recently is interest group-based meetings. So if there's a topic area of interest, people who are relying on our center for resources or for expertise are gathering in that forum, which is core agnostic.
Great, thank you. Another question that was raised was how you manage your publications listed on the ADRC RPPR when you're doing your competing renewal or your progress report. Anybody want to take that question from the group here? I heard we were talking at the get-together on Sunday that in the overall you get this huge listing there, but one other option is that in the individual cores, you could also highlight your publications that were recently involved with the core leader, core leader who had recently published, to actually have that also listed over there. It does have a little bit of duplication, but it does show and highlight that that core has been truly involved in the work there. And so is that something that your ADRCs are also doing and plan to do or have done in the past?
It's harder to do that in the RPPR than in the renewal. I mean, because there's not really a mechanism since they all get pulled into one place for the RPPR. But I was going to sort of say for the RPPR, I've learned, and maybe I'm a little jaded now, but we kind of do the 3 different ways to get the publication for the RPPR. So we certainly search in my NCBI by the different grant numbers. I do a quarterly query out to our investigators, and then we have them still submit their progress report publication lists to us during the RPPR time, even though those can't get uploaded. And no matter how many times we've asked, we always learn about papers that we didn't know about before, like, oh, my collaborator in England had this paper. So I guess that's my only advice, is to ask as many ways as you can think, and then you'll get the most publications that you can.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I would say, in terms of renewal, our external advisory committee encouraged us to substantiate how our ADRC was supporting each publication. So with our last submission, we went to a method where we were annotating each publication in terms of like data or samples or expertise. So it was just very transparent how it was supported, and we want to make sure to differentiate between the material resources that are more like the data, the samples, the participants, from the less tangible expertise, just so we were really clear. And then it's obvious, and we weren't coming across as overreaching. So that's the approach that we take.
Great, thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to jump to the next question there and just have us spend a few minutes on how centers are managing their succession and transition plans. And as you'll think about it, at Michigan, our center director, Dr. Hank Paulson, from the very beginning has said that every center needs to have a transition plan, and he sees that. And as we wrote our competing renewal, we developed a leaders initiative plan who were individuals who were past junior faculty who were rec mentees that we have actually brought in and had them mentored through the individual cores at our center so that we can see their growth and support them, mentor them, and bring them out there. So that we find as one of the methods that we found was something that we looked at transition and succession at our center. So if you want to share with that, Leslie, go ahead.
I would say that we also have got a pipeline of junior level investigators whom we are bringing into each core. And that has been very successful. So for our competing renewal, one of the things that we're trying to talk about is the fact that we have it's career development and leadership in each core. It's not only a succession plan, but it's actually having the person come in long before you're going to tap them as a core lead, and you promote them up into a co-lead so that they learn from the leader. And that is working effectively for us right now, and we'll continue that process.
Emily, Krista?
I think the same for us. We wanted to make sure that we paired a senior leadership figure with a more junior leader in each one of our cores, and also looking toward gender balance and other things to make sure that we have representation and leadership.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I would add that we use our Rec Scholar program as a training ground for helping to develop core leaders. We've done that for our clinical core co-lead and our neuropathology core lead. So the intention is to help give them additional support for training to assume that development role. And for example, our neuropathology co-lead did an externship with the Neuropath Lab at the University of Washington, who's our big brother in Brain Bank, and they've provided neuropathology leadership for our ADRC while we were getting that up and running. So it's allowed us to kind of formalize some of that development for co-leads.
And we have our final minute, and I was hoping to spend a little bit of time on collaborative partnerships, but I just wanted to say that collaborative partnerships would not be possible without the ADRC network, without the work and support we get from NAC as our coordinating center. We see that the examples are, there's so many, and with Clarity coming online, we see this wonderful thing. We also have the private-public partnership with the Alzheimer's Association, and not to forget, NIA, they are one of our biggest funders out here, and to actually have all of these various collaborations, there are so many of them. I may have missed out a few of them. I did grab the screenshot from the NAC website, and KU, I did put in your new logo in there, so send that to NAC, they'll need it up there. So, any final thoughts about one example of where you've had a great collaborative partnership?
Well,
Go ahead, Krista.
I'll just throw out there, if there are any newer administrators out there, just that we are a very welcoming group. I know sometimes, we'll be honest, we're all going in for renewal last year, this year, next year, so we're all sensitive to these things. But I would say administrators as a group, if you ask us, if one of us has figured something out, we are willing to help any and every center here. So we don't care who you are, what center you are, we will absolutely help you, and if we've figured it out, all of us up here on the stage, anyone here too, even if you don't have your direct mentor. So if you're new, don't suffer in silence. We're happy to collaborate and help you. We all have been there.
My shout out is to our program partners and volunteers. We have some very dedicated volunteers that run our support groups and really are the face of our ADRC, and where a lot of the participants feel the value of being a member of our center. So a shout out to all of those volunteers.
Sarah?
I'm going to say two. One I'm going to say is our electronic data capture work group. I think it's an incredible example of how a consortium has come together to build a new tool and drive adoption of that tool across an entire program. So I'm really, really proud of the work that group has done in collaboration with NAC. And the second I want to say is our collaboration with the Alzheimer's Association on the new investigator award expansion. I think it's we very rapidly undertook a massive expansion of that program, and it went remarkably well. There are certainly things we'll continue to build on for next year, but I'm just delighted that we were able to provide 13 awards to new investigators across the ADRC program, and that we were able to provide mentorship to even more investigators across the ADRC program, and are just really excited to see all the wonderful science and career advancement that's going to come out of that. So thank you guys again.
Any last words, Leslie?
I would also mention, in addition to the Alzheimer's Association Investigator Awards, not only the ones that are part of NAC, but also the ones that you actually foster yourself. We have a number of people who've been involved in the ADRC in Pittsburgh, but we also have a number of local volunteer organizations and foundations that do put out calls for proposals, and we end up with a number of really interesting initiatives. And one of them I would just highlight is there is a local foundation run by the Hillman family, and we ended up with a grant, which now has parlayed into some additional funding, to develop training programs for paid caregivers, but also for family caregivers. So an entire, basically a whole program of lectures and one-on-one opportunities with people has turned out to be a wonderful partnership, and now we are actually being able to offer that to some of our own family caregivers.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I just would like to acknowledge our program officers at NIA and the staff that are there, Cerise and Nina, and your tireless advocacy on behalf of all of our centers, everything you do publicly and behind the scenes to help us all be integrated together. So thank you very much.